Hello everyone. So this video is actually going to be a bit varied, and I try not to do this very often, but there's simply a lot of things I want to talk about. So what I'm going to do is summarize each of the talking points. I'm going to call this just world news, right? World news, things that are going on right now in late September 2017. Today is actually September the 20th, 2017. I'm just saying that for archival purposes. There is a lot going on, a lot to talk about, a lot going on in the news. What I want to do is just briefly outline some of these things, and it's very possible that I'll talk about them in greater detail later on. Um, so, first things first, Donald Trump's maiden speech at the UN as President of the United States. Um, it certainly was inevitably going to attract attention, even had it not been Donald Trump, had it been a non-exceptional president, American president, just by virtue of the fact that he is the American president. North Korea has been one of the most profound issues this year, so of course President Trump brought that up. I watched the speech, and I have to say, the thing is, Trump is such a polarizing figure that Trump haters won't listen to anything; they'll just dismiss Trump outright. But like I say, he is a polarizing figure, so Trump supporters are likewise going to blindly praise him without any critique. I try to be fair. Um, I'm not a Trump supporter, but I try to be fair. And there were parts of the speech that were statesmanlike, and he made reasonable points about the need for respect for sovereignty and national laws and so on. I think those are points that a lot of people around the world can resonate with, a lot of governments can resonate with, would resonate with. It is a little bit contradictory, though, given that Donald Trump has isolated the United States by pulling out of the Paris Climate Agreement. Whatever you think of that, it is a isolationist position. There are signs that he might be somewhat softening his position in that, and it would be particularly poignant at a time when large swathes of the United States have faced the devastation of powerful hurricanes, of course, Harvey and Irma, and now Maria, and that has also devastated parts of the Caribbean. What stands out about Trump's speech is his Rocket Man statement on Kim Jong-Un. It would almost be comical. It immediately made me think of Elton John. That was his sort of stage name. It's sort of amusing, but it's difficult to be too amused when you really consider the implications here. This is arguably the most powerful man in the world, or at least one of the most powerful men in the world, basically threatening to wipe out a nation or saying that we could destroy a nation. Now, everyone knows that the United States is a very powerful country militarily, well, the most powerful country militarily, and the US could do that. So here's my take on it. I think the regime in North Korea is vile. I think it's ghastly, and without question, Kim Jong Un has been testing the world's patience. And I do believe that the American president, along with the international community, has to take not only a tough line on this, but cannot it just can't be the situation as usual. Even Moon Jae-in, whom some would describe as a liberal, in terms of his attitude to the North Koreans, even he has toughened his rhetoric. So I think it's unrealistic to expect the world community and the American president, among others, to simply be business as usual. Or we condemn this attack. Let's just move on. And the Chinese are misguided if they think that that's going to be the case. They must know that the world cannot continue to show patience. But, and this is a very important thing, the world expects this sort of language from Kim Jong Un. They expect him to be erratic. They expect him to threaten to wipe out the imperialist Americans, etc. He is a ruthless dictator, and it comes with the territory, and it is what people expect. But when you have the President of the United States um, basically saying, we will destroy you if we're attacked, everyone knows that would be the protocol. The United States is a nuclear state. But to be so blunt about it is astonishingly undiplomatic. And when I talk about diplomacy, I'm not necessarily talking about towards the North Koreans. I'm talking about powerful countries like Russia and China that Washington will have to work with. Now, this is not coming from a point of view of any sympathy to the Kim regime. Like I say, I think it's a ghastly regime. But I will say this, I think the Chinese are right to point out that inflammatory language from America doesn't entirely help. And this is not that I am ideologically neutral. I'm not. You know, if there's a war, of course I'm on the side of the West. It goes without saying. But Trump is not helping matters. He's not. Um, a strong leader would be condemning Kim Jong-Un and saying we will not tolerate this behavior any longer. But the sort of approach that Trump is taking, it's almost like he's trying to match Kim Jong-Un with words. I think it's a mistake. Because Kim Jong-un would love an excuse to attack Guam. Now, we know the US could easily defeat North Korea, but that isn't the point here. The point is about trying to prevent a regional escalation, which would get a lot more complicated. I watched Theresa May's speech. I thought it was a good speech. I thought she raised a lot of important points. There has been some criticism of her for being too quiet about the situation of the Rohingya people in Myanmar. There's also been criticism of our position on Saudi Arabia and Yemen. But I don't want to bring too much into this video, otherwise I'm going to be talking about everything. The situation in Myanmar is horrendous. There has been increasing international criticism from such renowned figures as Desmond Tutu, among others, and Muhammad Yunus. You know, fellow Nobel laureates, that Aung San Suu Kyi has a lot to answer for in terms of basically her apathy, her supposed apathy. Now, in her speech to the Burmese parliament, she condemned all human rights abuses, but she stopped short of again talking specifically about what is going on in Rakhine State. One thing that troubles me somewhat is that because of the threat of pan-Islamism elsewhere, we know that pan-Islamism causes an immense amount of violence. And I don't believe that Islam is a peaceful religion. I've never bought that line. I don't believe that any religion could be just called peaceful outright. But some people are kind of using that to say, oh, well, because of the actions of ISIS, that's okay what's happening to the Rohingya people. These are innocent men, women, and children. They're not terrorists. And yes, there may be militant groups, but that doesn't justify the dehumanization of an entire people. And two, this isn't just about Myanmar. I believe Bangladesh also has a lot to answer for. Yes, they're in refugee camps, but these people are stateless. I would argue at the moment they are among the world's most persecuted people, and it is an appalling situation. And I do believe that Aung San Suu Kyi probably could have done a lot more. I don't believe that she's Superwoman, and I believe that some people are maybe expecting her to do everything. That's a bit unfair. Nevertheless, I feel she could have said more. I think she's allowed herself to get too close to the military, and she's sort of set herself into a trap here. So it's a very sad situation. Obviously, there's been big natural disasters. I mentioned the hurricanes. There was this devastating earthquake in Mexico yesterday, big damage in Mexico City and around neighboring municipalities. The latest is 224 people have lost their lives. It's the deadliest earthquake by far this year, and that probably will rise. President Pena Nieto has been talking about around the clock, obviously, emergency efforts. So I hope they can reach people, and my heart goes out to all the victims of that disaster. Also, the flooding in South Asia, 1,300 plus people killed in India, Nepal, and Bangladesh from extreme flooding there. So this has been a year of scattered natural disasters. We haven't had any major natural disasters on the scale of, for example, a Haiti earthquake or a Cyclone Nargis in 2008. But there has been a lot of scattered, um, damaging natural disasters all over the place. In other news, I already mentioned Stanislav Petrov, the Soviet lieutenant who possibly prevented the Third World War back in 1983. It turns out he actually passed away back in May. It's only been reported now, I assume for security reasons. Remarkable man, look him up. And in other news, Jake LaMotta has died, the Raging Bull, middleweight champion of the world in the early 1950s, 1949, the first man to beat Sugar Ray Robinson, tough as nails. I believe he was 96 or 97. And of course immortalized in the Robert De Niro film Raging Bull. So Jake LaMotta has passed away. Um, and I think I'll leave it there for now. No doubt there will be more things to say. There is, of course, other things going on. But I wanted to sort of bring all these things into one video. The Cassini probe, just to get away from war and politics, the Cassini probe to Saturn has ended its mission, and it has it's basically crash landed in the Saturn. It brought back wonderful pictures of our second largest planet, particularly Saturn's moons. There's a lot of fascinating research being done into moons like Titan, which could support the conditions for microorganisms, certainly water and oxygen conditions. So that's very interesting. Cassini's done fantastic work. So yeah, that's come to an end. I'm going to round it up there. I'm sure there will be many more things that can be said, but I'll leave it there for now. Thanks for watching.